Some of the things you're about to hear, you're probably going to love. Some of the things you hear, you probably won't like. And some of these things you're about to hear, you probably be a little bit indifferent about. That's because we're about to talk about Marcus Smart. And look, we got to hit it from all angles, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What he brings to the Memphis Grizzlies coming up right here, right now on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Top of the week, Locked On Grizzlies fam. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Appreciate you once again joining us for another week, another day with Locked On Grizzlies. I'm going solo today. Joe Molinax getting a well-deserved day off. He took care of you guys on Friday as I got the day off. So we try to mix and mingle every now and then. But want to appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you continue to tune into Locked On Grizzlies everywhere. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, even on YouTube. Locked On Grizzlies is everywhere. And today we got a special episode for you on Locked On Grizzlies. And that's the Marcus Smart breakdown, because that's all we're going to talk about today as a spoiler. We're not talking about anything related to free agency. We're not going to talk too much, about John Morant and everything else going around the Grizzlies. Today is simply about Marcus Smart, because what I've done is I've talked to a lot of people in the Boston market over the weekend. I watched some old Boston games. And of course, if you just watch the NBA in general, you're familiar with Boston, because each of the 9 years of Marcus Smart's career, the Celtics have been in the postseason, including 5 Eastern Conference Finals appearances. So with all that being said, today is the good, the bad, the great, the ugly about Marcus Smart. And quite frankly, I think there's a lot more good than there is bad. But we got to hit it from everything, because you want the real, right? You want to know what I need to be prepared for. Tell me the best about Marcus Smart. Tell me the worst. That's how I would want to approach it. So that's how I'm going to give it to you guys as well. And we're going to break it down in 3 different segments here. First segment, we're going to talk about the shooting aspect, and then we're going to talk about Marcus Smart on the defensive end, because I heard you guys. I heard all the concerns about a potential defensive thing that some people aren't too fond of with the addition of Marcus Smart. We'll get to that later. And then we're going to talk about him as a playmaker in our last and final segment, because at the end of the day, as we've said on here, and as Zach Kleiman has kind of alluded to when he was indirectly speaking about potential additions to the Grizzlies when we spoke to him after the NBA draft, he said basically the Grizzlies were looking for a guy who can play defense on the wing and a guy who could, add some versatility to the point guard position. In a way, the Grizzlies were looking for someone who could kind of replace Tyus Jones and Dillon Brooks, a two for one, so to speak. And Marcus Smart, some people think you get that. Some people say, I'm not quite so sure. But let's get into it. Let's get into what Marcus Smart brings to the Memphis Grizzlies. And again, I got to start with the shooting, because that's the most obvious aspect of the game of basketball to the casual fan, to the very hard watchers, or whatever the case may be. However you consume the game of basketball, however you consume the Grizzlies. The thing is, with the shooting, let's get into it. This is how it goes. At the end of the day, Marcus Smart is a career 38.6% shooter from the field. 38.6% shooter in his career. I don't have to tell you that's not good. Career 38%. Let's put this in perspective here. Dillon Brooks this past season shot 39.6%, and that was a career low. Dillon Brooks for his career is at 41.6%. Just to give you some perspective here, Marcus Smart, career 38.6% shooter. Not good at all. However, his career high is 42.2%. Again, so here's the thing. You got to accept this. Marcus Smart is never going to be a great shooter, probably. It's just never going to happen. You got to live with what comes with him as a shooter. Well, you may be asking, well, what are some of the things that factor into what comes with Marcus Smart as a shooter? Start with something that's good about him that I've noticed just from watching him over the years, because you may be wondering, how can a guy be such a consistent starter on such a elite team for so long with a career shooting percentage of 38.6% and a career high shooting percentage of 42.2%? Well, here's the answer. Number one, Marcus Smart understands his role as a player in the starting lineup. This is very important for a guy who has his shooting numbers throughout his career. Again, I'm going to use Dillon Brooks in this shooting segment a lot for perspective, because this is Locked On Grizzlies, and Grizzlies fans, at the end of this season, Dillon Brooks was the longest tenured Grizzly. So simply put, he's the guy that we're most familiar with. Dillon Brooks played 73 games this past season. I believe Marcus Smart played 63 games. Dillon Brooks had 28 games of 15 or more shot attempts. Marcus Smart had 11. Going to say that again. Dillon Brooks played 73 games this season, 28 games, taking 15 or more shots. Marcus Smart had 11 over a 63-game period. I was listening to some videos as well. If you go look at the Celtics end of season presser after they lost to the Heat in Game 7, what you'll see in there is Marcus Smart said something that probably won't hear a guy like Dillon Brooks say too often. There are times where he alludes to, getting the ball to Jaren Moore and Ja Morant and whatever the case may be. But Marcus Smart pointed out the fact that, hey, he needs to shoot the ball better in order to help those guys out, get the ball to them in better positions. He's alluding to, I guess, the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown tandem and what may be. But what I got from that is a guy who understands his role is, hey, you're not going to be asked to take more than 15 shots that much. You're not going to be asked to score 20 points on a given night. Whereas in the exit interviews for the Grizzlies, for one, this is not to pile on anything bad about Dillon Brooks, because even most people who follow the show, I wrote in March. I even wrote a story about how Dillon Brooks was changing his role to something it's never been, and kind of complimenting him on that as well. But if you go to the exit interviews, what Dillon Brooks said was there's way more to his game than what the Grizzlies were asking him to do. Basically be the spot-up shooter and things like that. And it was a guy who basically said, look, I can do way more than this. They're not letting me. They're not calling plays for me, is what Dillon Brooks was saying, and things like that. Sounds like with Marcus Smart, you're going to get a guy who understands, hey, Ja's the head of the snake. Jaren's got to get the low post touches. Desmond Bane's one of the best shooters in the NBA. Let me just space the floor, help out, and do what I can to offset some of the coverages that'll be coming those guys' way. Now, I want to touch on a couple more things here. And with the shooting, right? He's not afraid to shoot. Yes, that's a good thing. But in the case of Marcus Smart, go over the past 5 seasons, he's attempted more three-pointers than two-pointers over the last 5 seasons. And it's not that I pointed out the totality of the field goal percentage with Marcus Smart. But at the end of the day, he hasn't been a terrible three-point shooter. You look at his numbers, it's more overall field goal percentage, not that great. But 33% from three-point range this past season. I think that's like a little bit below league average, around league average. 33% the year before that. And then 33% the year before that. So pretty much hovering around 33% the last 3 years. A couple years before that, 34.7%, 36.4%. But in each of those seasons, what you get is close to a little bit under 2 3-pointers made per game. So what he lacks for in overall efficiency, Marcus Smart makes up for it just with his ability to shoot the basketball, because, one, teams aren't going to leave Marcus Smart open a lot. I mean, it comes down to it. If you look at Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, those guys on the floor, he's the worst percentage guy. But he is going to take the shot, and he's not going to be afraid. Which leads me to the last point I want to talk about with Marcus Smart from a shooting standpoint is the Grizzlies are playing for the playoffs right now. I've said that time and time again. These 50-win seasons don't mean anything anymore. Winning the division, yeah, you've done it the last 2 seasons. Who cares if they do that again, right? Right now, it's about getting in the best position to win in the postseason. Because if the Grizzlies come out and win 54 games this season, they exit and get a first round exit, guess who's on the hot seat? Taylor Jenkins. So they got to do more. Marcus Smart in his career, particularly over the last 3 seasons, is what I'm going to focus on. The last 3 playoff runs for Boston. He has stepped it up as a playoff performer in the postseason. This is important because I just said 2 guys that he's pretty much replacing are Tyus Jones and Dillon Brooks. You can make a strong argument that Tyus Jones and Dillon Brooks were the 2 biggest no-shows in the playoff series against the Los Angeles Lakers. From Dillon Brooks, the Lakers pretty much just left them wide open, and the Grizzlies never found an adjustment. They tried a bunch of things, but nothing really worked because Dillon just wasn't making shots at a high enough clip. Tyus Jones, the minutes fluctuated and whatnot. One game he's playing 19 minutes. Another game he's starting in place of Ja Morant. But at the end of the day, he did not produce at a high level. Marcus Smart, the last 3 seasons in the playoffs, 35% or better from three-point range. Again, I just touched on the 33% shooting in the regular season. 35% or better in each of the last 3 postseasons. I think that's big, quite frankly. And it's not just that. The makes go up. He made over 3 3-pointers per game 3 postseasons ago. The last 2 postseasons, 2.3 3-pointers made per game, 2.2. Again, he was hovering a little bit under 2.2 3-pointers made in the regular season in each of those years. Marcus Smart is going to step it up in the postseason. I think this is a guy, we say he's not afraid to take the shots, and that's huge for this Grizzlies team. The Grizzlies now, I think they've gotten a decent amount of experience to be ready for what comes in the postseason going forward. But adding a guy like Marcus Smart, who's not going to be hesitant, who has proven he can knock down the big shots, who's proven he will take the big shots. You look at that Miami Heat series. I think I can't remember the exact game. I want to say it was game 4, game 5, maybe, where Celtics were on the brink of elimination. Marcus Smart gets the inbound pass with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on the floor, and he takes the potential game-winning shot. Game-tying shot. No, it was the game-winning shot. Yeah, takes the potential game-winning shot. Missed it, but I believe Jason Tatum was on one side, and Marcus Smart came in and got the tip back. Forgot which player it was. They got the tip back in that scenario. But Marcus Smart, nevertheless, was the guy who took a couple big shots, not only in that series, but over the course of his career. That's my point. I can't really remember how that situation played out. I think it was Marcus Smart that came and took the shot. Yeah. Anyways, Marcus Smart, shooting-wise, this is what you gotta accept. Not the greatest of shooters in the world. Streaky, yes. But at the end of the day, he understands his role. He's not going to take too many shots away from the Ja, from Dez, from Jaren. He understands what he's on the floor to do. To playoffs, he steps up, as proven over the last 3 playoff runs. His numbers will go up in that case. And then what you're going to get from him, you're not going to get a lot of 2-pointers. You're not going to get too many of those. You're going to get a guy who's on the floor to take 3-pointers, space the floor, and be efficient. Marcus Smart attempted more 3s than 2s in each of the last 5 years. That's what you're going to get from a shooting standpoint of Marcus Smart. Well, now we got to get to the nitty-gritty. We got to talk about defense. Got to get into this grit and grind thing, right? Everybody's saying grit and grind 2.0. Let's talk about what Marcus Smart can bring on the defensive side of the ball coming up next. But before we get to that, we got to talk about eBay Motors, because it's where you build your vision part by part, heading right over there to ebaymotors.com. And look, in addition to Marcus Smart, the Grizzlies are trying to build a championship team. And a championship team is about each player on that team being a perfect fit. It's the same way with your car. Because look, for the parts that fit, head over to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. All you got to do is head over to ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Look, eBay Guaranteed Fit. It's only available to the U.S. customers. So if you're not in the U.S., so sorry. But the eligible items and exclusions do apply for everyone. So head over right now to ebaymotors.com and build your vision part by part. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about Marcus Smart and defense. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back, everyone, to Locked on Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. And now we got to talk about defense. And I got so much to say. Because I can't believe I can't believe some of the things I've seen when we're talking about Marcus Smart's defense. But I get it. A lot of us watch the Grizzlies and probably see the Celtics on TV maybe once or twice on the ESPN. Then you watch them the 2 times they play the Grizzlies. So you probably see Marcus Smart 3-4 times a year. Then you turn on the postseason, probably watch a couple of those games. Celtics are not this high-flying, super entertaining team, so you probably don't watch a lot of them. But you probably do. I love watching the Celtics, so you probably do. But that's neither here nor there. My point to you is, let's get into this defensive thing. And I want to start with this whole question about Marcus Smart guarding small forward. So when the Grizzlies got Marcus Smart, there was an immediate fit question, right? The fit question said, okay, you got Ja Morant, you got Desmond Bane. Marcus Smart is a guard. Who plays the 3 on this team? Who is going to play the 3? The Grizzlies need a 3. We talked about it on Locked On Grizzlies extensively. The Grizzlies need to address the small forward position that has been vacated by the potential absence of Dillon Brooks going forward as he enters free agency. Well, the Grizzlies went out and made a trade and acquired Marcus Smart, a 6'3 guard. So a lot of people say, oh, he's not tall enough. He's not big enough. Is Marcus Smart going to come off the bench? Well, guess what? Here's my answer. We don't have the immediate answer to where Marcus Smart will potentially play in terms of coming off the bench, starting, and whatnot. But what we do have the answer to, Marcus Smart was traded to the Memphis Grizzlies because he is a premier elite defensive wing. He is a guy who 2 seasons ago won the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year award. And you don't win that award just by saying, oh, I can guard point guards. Big men abuse me. Power forwards abuse me, but I can guard point guards and shooting guards. Marcus Smart is an elite defender. Don't get it twisted. Let's get into why this whole height thing. Who cares? Who cares about your height when you have a 6'9 wingspan? Because that's the case for Marcus Smart. Let's give you some perspective here. Desmond Bane and Dillon Brooks, right? This was a little joke that Dillon Brooks used to say this joke all the time when he was talking about, Jaren Jackson Jr. and how gifted he is as a defender because he has these naturally long arms, big hands that just help him be elite defensively. Well, in the case of Dillon Brooks, he had to work a little bit harder. He's got to slide his feet. He's got to heavily contest shots. He got to jump a little bit higher and things like that to contest shots because Dillon Brooks has like a 6'6 wingspan. Again, 6'6 guy, 6'6 wingspan. Desmond Bane is even shorter. You all seen the running jokes on Desmond Bane's arm. 6'6 guy, 6'4 wingspan. So basically, Marcus Smart is 6'3, yes. But his wingspan is 6'9. Could you imagine Desmond Bane with a 6'9 wingspan or Dillon Brooks with a 6'9 wingspan? That enables Marcus Smart to get better contests on shots. So, yes, in natural height, what he lacks, he makes up for it in his ability to contest shots. And make no mistake about it, you've seen this is a 3-time, winner of the Hustler of the Year award. He's going to make those plays. You see his highlights. You see him diving all over the floor for loose balls, getting all type of floor burns. Marcus Smart is that type of guy. You see him taking charges. I know some people will say he'll flop every now and then, but with Marcus Smart, you're going to get a guy who defensively can get after. Now, let's get into the other side of this because two years ago, Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year. And this past season, you could say defensively, some people will say, oh, Marcus Smart took a step back. Some people will say it was a typical Marcus Smart year defensively. What we saw was Smart did not make all defensive team this year. Derek White was the guy on his team who made all defense. In fact, I myself voted for Derek White, second team all defense in the NBA this year, and I didn't vote for Marcus Smart to make it this season. Let's get into the numbers. First of all, before we get into the numbers, I always do the disclaimer because defense It's an eye test statistic, and I'll do my eye test stuff last. But I'm gonna get into the numbers first because people have tried to quantify defense with numbers lately, and I try to make as much sense of it as I can. But here's the thing: defensive rating this past season for Marcus Smart was 111.7. That's the second highest in his career. It's a little bit higher than the usual. I think Marcus Smart's career defensive rating is around 106 or 104, somewhere in that range, but it's well below 111.7. So had to take a little deeper dive into that. And you know what I found? 111.7 is the second highest defensive rating of Marcus Smart's career. You know when the first highest was? 3 seasons ago. By the way, what happened the following season was Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year. So he had a defensive rating of over 113 a couple years back, and he followed that up with becoming the 2022 Defensive Player of the Year. So with that being said, here's the thing. Marcus Smart was also 80th in Defensive Raptor. This is a stat that kind of quantifies who are the best defenders in the NBA. Defensive Raptor. He finished 80th in the NBA. For perspective, I think Dylan Brooks was 42nd. And there were 3 or 4 Grizzlies that ranked above Marcus Smart in this category. But here's the other thing. Marcus Smart was 55th in Defensive Raptor when he won the Defensive Player of the Year award. So it all leads me just going back to the eye test because most of the advanced stats did not favor Marcus Smart as much defensively as in the past. Don't get it twisted. His defensive win shares were still pretty solid. His defensive box plus minus, I think 0.8, still relatively decent compared to most of the NBA. But in terms of elite defensive, type guys, it was not as high as you probably expected from Marcus Smart. As I went back and watched, here's the thing: what you have with the Boston Celtics, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes who are the elite defenders on that team because, quite frankly, all of them look elite, and you wonder who may be blending in because of that. You got Marcus Smart, elite defender in my mind. Jason Tatum, elite defender in my mind. Jaylen Brown, elite defender. Derek White, I voted him second team all defense, elite defender. Al Horford is a great positional defender. Robert Williams, the Time Lord, incredible shot blocker. All these guys are just wonderful defensive players. Malcolm Brogdon, a great defensive player, amazing strength for a guard, one of the strongest guards in the NBA. With all that being said, Marcus Smart, before any of those guys got there, was already known as a high-level defensive player. If you watch him this season, from a strength perspective, the reason he's able and he will be able to hold his own against guys who play small forward, because Marcus Smart is 220 pounds, and he's built, and he's smart at the same time. He knows, okay, some of those 240-pound guys, they're going to put their shoulder into his chest, and Marcus Smart is going to get in great position. He's going to draw the charge. He's going to go the other way. At the end of the day, my point to you is Marcus Smart can guard small forwards. The Grizzlies believe that, and if they want to start him in a lineup with Desmond Bane and John Morant, on offense, he's probably going to play the 2. Desmond Bane will move down to the 3, whatever the case may be. But Marcus Smart, simply put, is just going to guard whoever the best wing scorer is. So if that's Brandon Ingram, 6'8", 6'9", Brandon Ingram, guess what? You're going to put 6'3" Marcus Smart on him. You're going to say, we like our chances. That's what the Grizzlies are going to do. He has 6'9" wingspan. They like their chances. And if it's Luka Doncic, you're gonna put Marcus Smart on the ball, and then Desmond Bane will guard the other guy. But that's kind of what the Grizzlies are hoping for in Marcus Smart. They're hoping they can get a guy who can guard 1 through 3 pretty consistently, maybe even switch down into 4s. Saw some real good clips of Marcus Smart guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo and kind of holding his own in that matchup there as well. So my takeaway is Marcus Smart as a defender, yes, 6'3" in height, but it's not like you're just going to turn around and shoot over this guy just because you're 6'4" or 6'5". In the case of the 2 guys we just mentioned, Desmond Bane and Dylan Brooks, they're going to turn around. They might not see him before his hands go up, but when those hands go up, they're probably right in those guys' grills, and he could possibly block the shots. A 6'9" wingspan ain't nothing to play with. So with all that being said, I like the chances of Marcus Smart kind of becoming a defender who can guard 1s, 2s, 3s, and maybe even, nibble and dabble, with some switches with some 4s from time to time, being feisty and things like that. Last but not least, You got to talk about the underrated part of the game. Everyone's going to talk about the shooting. Everyone's going to talk about the defensive side of the basketball. But let's talk about the playmaking. What can Marcus Smart add to the Grizzlies as a playmaker? Let's talk about that coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back, everyone, to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Damichael Cole, beat writer right here for the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. And right now, this episode is just strictly Marcus Smart. We're talking Marcus Smart. We're breaking down what he brings to the game, what he brings to the Memphis Grizzlies. Quite frankly, what Marcus Smart, how he will help the Grizzlies in the postseason. Talked about the defense. We talked about the shooting. Now we got to talk about the underrated part of the game. We're not going to hover on this one for too long because, quite frankly, I think playmaking-wise, this only will matter so much while Ja's out. When Ja gets back, probably going to see much more of Marcus Smart off the ball, and then you'll see the 8 or 9 minutes of the game probably with him being the backup point guard in those situations. Here's my thing. Marcus Smart, if you look at his playmaking, this guy, again, I said that he only shoots. He shoots way more threes than twos, but this is a high-level combo guard. He's very comfortable with the ball in his hands. You look at a lot of his assists. He's had a lot of driving kick type assists. Very comfortable as a playmaker. Sees the floor very well. And I went back and read a lot about what the people around the Celtics are saying. There's a lot of confidence in the past with Marcus Smart's playmaking ability being the thing that would fuel the Celtics offense. I'm not going to pretend I'm the Celtics beat writer or anything, but I've watched the Celtics because, quite frankly, again, they're a very entertaining team to watch. In my mind, have a lot of real good high-level players, and they play in the postseason a lot, play on national TV a lot. With all that being said, you watch the Celtics in the postseason, the good, the bad, the ugly. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown are high-level isolation scorers, and sometimes they can get too heavy on that. But when the Celtics are at their best, guys like Marcus Smart are facilitating the basketball, and the team is feeding off of that. And that's kind of why he's gotten this rep as this connector, as Taylor Jenkins likes to say, or this heart and soul type guy for Boston, the captain, so see it over there as well. But Marcus Smart, again, 63 games played this past season, 20 games in a regular season of 8 or more assists. I think that's a very noteworthy number for the way Boston plays because, again, Marcus Smart, you look at the role that typically he's had in Boston. He's come off the bench. He's started. He's, done all of the above in his time in Boston over there. But quite frankly, at the end of the day, when he's asked to be more of a playmaker, Marcus Smart steps up to it. I think I said 63 games played, but it's actually 61. In 61 games played, 20. So pretty much a third of his games had 8 or more assists. Over the course of the season, he averaged 6.3 assists per game, as a assist man over there. And here's the other thing. With those 6.3 assists, 2.3 turnovers. So not quite a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, but a little bit under that. I think basically that's pretty good numbers for a guy you're probably going to ask to be your backup point guard. Not quite Tyus Jones. I mean, no one's Tyus Jones when it comes to assist to turnover ratio. But basically, what I take from that is it's good enough to say, hey, we want this guy to run the second unit, especially if that so-said second unit is potentially going to have Luke Kennard, probably going to have an improved, Jake LaRavia or Zaire Williams or David Roddy, whatever the case may be. One of those guys will be improved. You're going to have Santi Aldama. Then later on in the season, you're going to have a Brandon Clark. Maybe early in the season, you're going to have Xavier Tillman Sr. I think that's a very efficient second unit with those guys getting a lot of playing time together and Marcus Smart being the lead facilitator for that group. I see Marcus Smart as someone who's capable of the drive and kick, who can occasionally make the pass where he sees something happen before the rest of the court does as well. And then to have 8 or more assists in 20 games, 61 games played in the regular season on a team that has 2 guys, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, who operate really well with the ball in their hands, and as well as guys like Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White coming off the bench, who also can operate with the ball in their hands as well. I like this move for Marcus Smart. We talked about that all last week after the addition of Marcus Smart. And quite frankly, the assist to turnover ratio is good. The shooting numbers aren't great, but to me, they're good enough to say we like this guy to make a couple 3-pointers a game on this team. Can he guard ones, twos, threes, and hold his own in a switch every now and then against fours? I do think so as well. I like the move. I think this breakdown we kind of touched on the good, touched on some of the things you might not, you're not going to be too fond of. But in the end of the day, I think there is an upgrade here. I know I mentioned the name Dylan Brooks a lot. I think at the end of the day, you get a guy who understands his role better. And as the playoffs showed, Dylan Brooks, for one, I mean, you go back to that Utah series from a couple years ago, he was amazing in the postseason. And even against Golden State, he had a game or two last season where he kind of put the Grizzlies on his back. But this last postseason run, Dylan Brooks, it just left a nasty taste in a lot of people's mouths. And Marcus Smart is one of the guys who the Grizzlies are hoping can help change that. We want to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies, and thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day. I need all my everydayers, to all our newfound Locked On Grizzlies followers as well. A lot of the people from Celtics Nation have came over here and said, hey, we want to keep up with the Grizzlies because we love Marcus Smart so much. Thank you for coming over to Locked On Grizzlies, and make sure you tune in to the show on tomorrow as well. Got a real good topic that I want to touch on about, and not going to give you too much, but I just will say, yes, Ja Morant is the highest paid player in Grizzlies franchise history, but how much longer will that be the case? I'm going to touch on it. We got a lot more to talk about as well. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Just remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.